I am here today with Erin, just sharing another incredible story. Erin has quite the journey, and I'm excited for you to hear her story. It is pretty special that it's Good Friday and we are here. I just think that that is significant for Erin. So can you tell us when your journey began and kind of what made you finally pick up that first book? Because I know there was kind of like a feeling that you had about it and you were kind of nervous and then you finally jumped in. So share that piece with us.
Yeah, so I guess about my health journey, I have struggled with chronic health issues pretty much my entire life. I can't remember so much as like my early childhood, but definitely in my teen years, I was always that like sick teenager, like just no immune system, but no real explanation, just chronic upper respiratory infections, urinary tract infections, colds, flus, just anything you could think of. It felt like I lived on antibiotics. But anytime I got blood work done, I was always told I was perfectly healthy. However, none of my friends or even my family or sisters caught anything nearly as much as I did. I kind of just accepted that that was my normal and never thought too much about it until I got to college. And I came down with severe mono so bad that I was hospitalized and actually had to be homeschooled, well, work from home for a whole semester of college because I was so sick. And that was really what took me from functional to non-functional after that, and my health just started to decline. So after that bout of mono, I just never recovered, and I suffered from, more symptoms than I could possibly count. Everything from anxiety, depression, chronically swollen lymph nodes. I would say, actually, my mom told me when I was like 5 years old, I had lymph nodes that were swollen down my neck, and the doctors told her then even that like that was normal. And looking back, I'm like, I think I was definitely born into chronic illness, and my body did its best to fight those things off as long as it could until it couldn't anymore. And so, yeah, I had a very, very long journey of just being sick, but told that I was healthy. I lived on antibiotics and prednisone as though that was normal for probably 10, 12 years. And so the year I got married, which was 2009, was probably my worst year. That month of my wedding month, which was February, I had an upper respiratory infection. I had strep throat. And then I had found out the day after we were married that I had suffered a mild heart attack. Again, all of my tests came back, quote unquote, normal. And at that point, I realized if I was going to be a mom, I could not accept that as normal. I was 25 years old and nobody could tell me why I had that many illnesses. I had 102 fever on my wedding day and had to basically medicate myself. And I barely even remember my wedding day. That's how sick I was. And I was so used to feeling sick all the time that I didn't know what it felt like to feel well anymore. And this was before I even had kids. So I was able to sleep a lot more. So that was all before, yeah. So that was all like when I was even functional too. That's the scary part. I was still working full time, and I was still able to be all of that sick. Fast forward to, and that was all also without any diagnoses. I never had any kind of labels or diagnoses thrown my way. Once I got pregnant with my son, which was in 2010, that was when everything really started to unravel. And so learning what I know now about medical medium, I can see that was just like what pushed my immune system right over the edge and probably shocked my adrenals to the point of no return. I had a really traumatic birth as well. And after I had him, I was diagnosed with celiac. I was diagnosed with lupus. I was told that I had rheumatoid arthritis. Every autoimmune disease you could think of. So that was actually what started my holistic health journey. I wasn't medical medium at that point, but I had went gluten-free. So I've been gluten-free for a really long time, and I started to research some holistic health options then. But I really still wasn't seeing results. I was getting better. I was starting to feel a tiny bit better, but nothing substantial. And then I got pregnant with my daughter in 2013, and it was after I had her that shortly after her, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And that was when I went from functional to non-functional. And that was when everything really came crashing down.
And neurological symptoms with that too, right?
So I have a bachelor's degree in business management. I had done small business accounting for 16 years, and I became so incapacitated. I couldn't think, I couldn't drive. I would black out. I didn't even know where I was. Like, I actually gave up my driver's license willingly because I knew it wasn't safe for me to even be in the car, because I'd be driving and I wouldn't even know where I was, and I would have my children in the car with me, and that would be frightening. And so I eventually lost my job, which, I had to be laid off. I wasn't able to work anymore. So I couldn't think, I couldn't work on a computer. I couldn't type. I couldn't remember numbers. And so I was laid off. And looking back, it was a blessing in disguise, because I wasn't fit to be working. I needed to work on my health, but I kept fighting for normalcy. Like, I couldn't accept that I was sick, because nobody else around me, was that sick, and nobody really understood it. So that's
so young, yes, and you don't look sick.
I didn't look sick. I had all these symptoms that, they fell under these categories of lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, achy joints, fatigue, but people think you can function through them. And the truth is, I thought I could function through them.
You spent a lot of time in bed. When I first met you, you were in bed. So
after that was when it really, really picked up. So after I had my daughter, at first I thought it was just, being that tired mom, but I realized very quickly that it was so much more than that. And so once I got the Lyme diagnosis, I was just reading through, I have a little journal here of when I was sick. This was in 2017. And I would spend days in bed, to the point where, like, my husband would have to use his sick time or vacation time to call out of work, because I couldn't even get out of bed to take care of my kids. And so that was so horrific. I mean, aside from the physical pain that I was in, at that point, once I had my Lyme diagnosis, my brain was gone. I couldn't think, I couldn't process, I couldn't drive. My muscles were starting to deteriorate. I had to sometimes crawl up my steps to go to bed at night. My bedroom was upstairs. I had no strength. If I was up for an hour to eat dinner with the family or cook a meal, I was in bed for 6 hours to recover. So it was like, I would get my kids off to school in the morning. I'd come home all day long just to have enough strength to make them dinner, to go back to bed and sleep the whole next day. Like, it was just my normal. And I had gone to probably 20, I think at one point I had counted it out. Within a 3-year period, I'd gone to 23 separate practitioners, everything from traditional MDs, specialists. At the time I was living in Philadelphia, so I had went downtown where, like, the best docs on earth are, University of Penn and lots of different university hospitals are supposed to be the best in the world. And nobody could tell me why I couldn't function. At one point, I was chasing lymphoma. I had these lymph nodes that were swollen in my neck that were the size of golf balls, and that was about when I had started to get connected with the medical medium community, because they had sent me down there and it was inconclusive, and they had to do a second biopsy, and it was terrifying. I mean, as a young mom, to think that you have a possibility of a cancer diagnosis. For anyone who does get that. I mean, in my case, I didn't, but I was in that waiting period of waiting for your test results. And in my case, that's not what it was, but they just didn't know why I was so sick. So all of that to say, I had a dear friend that I went to college with, and so she had known me for a long time. She knew my ups and downs of my health, and so she had reached out to me because she had known people in the medical medium community, and she was like, you really have to read his book and try this. Like, my friend healed herself, and you can do this too. And honestly, this is the part that I really want to share. I refused. I would not hear it. I was terrified of the word. How many times
did she try to get you to talk to me?
Probably a solid 2 years. And yes, if you haven't figured out, the person is Kimberly. And so I heard about her story. I had researched it myself. And for anybody watching, people that are hesitant, I get it. Like, I was that hesitant person as well. But I was also the person that had done all the things. Like, years I didn't have my Lyme diagnosis. I had tried every other traditional approach. I had done acupuncture, acupressure, every kind of herbalist you can imagine. I went to a genetic doctor who specialized in, genetic conditions and treating nutritional deficiencies that way. I mean, I lost my job. I had no source of income. My husband let me literally took our life savings down to zero. We racked up our credit cards, going from doctor to doctor, trying every protocol, praying that it would give me back a source of health and life. I mean, it literally would not only ruin my life, but my husband's life and my kids' lives. Like, they didn't have a mom. My husband didn't have a wife. Our life revolved around my illness 24/7. And so I struggled with the word medium, and I struggled with it so much to my fault that, like, I wouldn't even look into it. Everybody kept telling me, it's just fruits and vegetables. It's just a different way of lifestyle. But my own ignorance prevented me from healing probably much sooner than I could have. And so looking back at my journal, I can see it was in 2018 that I had gone to my last holistic doctor, who wanted to put me on a protocol of all kinds of more pills and herbs and things to treat my Lyme. And I will never forget, I walked out of her office and she looked me in the eye and she said, if you don't take this heavy round of antibiotics course, the next time I see you, you're going to be in a wheelchair. And I couldn't explain it. I didn't have a definitive answer, but I knew that my treatment for myself was not involving antibiotics. And so nobody else believed me, even my family. They're like, if you're that sick, if you have Lyme that bad, just take what the doctor says. And
I can't even imagine if you would have, Erin, because I took them, and we've had this conversation, but I can't even imagine where you would have been if you would have.
I mean, like I said,
for some people, it's, they are okay with it, but for some people, it just totally crashes their
right. And knowing that I had taken antibiotics, most of my youth, most of my teenage years, literally monthly, for probably 12 years, I had worked so hard to repair my gut from that I was like, I'd taken antibiotics my whole life. There's no way the antibiotics are going to cure this. I didn't know what it was or how I was going to cure it. But in my gut and using my intuition and my relationship with the Lord, I felt like there was a different way that God wanted me to heal. And so I needed to trust that. And so I even went as far as reaching out to my pastor. And so I had been presented the medical medium information, and I was so just worried about it, because my life, like, the reason why I guess Kimberly mentioned about, me speaking on Friday, is that, like, I love God. I love God with all my heart. And so I wasn't always this way. Trust me, there's many people in my life. But for about 10 years, I've been following closely with Jesus, and I credit him for saving my soul, and I credit him for saving my health and my life. And so I wanted to do what I thought was not only in my health best interest, but that would be honoring to him. And
I'm glad you're sharing this, because there are people that, that feel like that. And I'm really glad that you are sharing this.
Right. So I spoke with my pastor. I did some more research and praying about it. And then finally I bought the book. So this was before I even understood the book. Okay. That's how judgmental I was. And I read through it, and immediately when I learned about the Epstein-Barr, I started to connect the dots, because from my young teenage years, I was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr. And I remember I told you I knew I had the mono, and my grandmother actually died of ovarian cancer. And I remember when she did, her doctor had told our family that the only thing that he could think of was that her Epstein-Barr levels were off the chart. And I thought that was so unbelievable, especially when I started to read more about medical medium and how Epstein-Barr is carried generation to generation through families. And everyone on my side of the family struggled with chronic fatigue. Nobody as much as with the immune system problems as me, but I couldn't deny that connection. And knowing that my blood work had always showed positive Epstein-Barr, I was like, there really is something here. And so I was faced with two options. I could do this crazy protocol and spend, thousands and thousands of dollars on another doctor giving me all kinds of medications and also telling me to do antibiotics. Or I could try the fruits and vegetables that the Lord himself created and put on the earth from day one, and say, you know what, I don't understand everything, but I'm just going to try the fruits and veggies, because, like, what could be worse? Like, spending more in debt on credit cards and more medications, or trying the fruits and veggies. And so I got the book. I tried the fruits and veggies. Well, actually, I'll start with this. I tried just the celery juice. I started with just celery juice, and within 2 weeks, I noticed 2 weeks that I was able to get through an afternoon without crashing. That was my very first symptom of like, well, I don't want to say symptom. That was my very first realization that what if this works? Like, could it be that simple? And not that it's simple. I'm not minimizing that. It's a radical life change. But could it be as simple as saying the food we put in our body creates life or death? The food we put in our body either heals us or harms us. And even though I thought I was eating clean because I wasn't like eating McDonald's or fast food, I wasn't hyper nourishing the way that we really are meant to eat. And so those couple of weeks on celery juice were enough to really, really sell me. And so going back, I know I had said I talked to my pastor about it before. And so, you know, obviously, if anybody's watching this that's involved in a Christian community, I'm sure most of you are very concerned about the word medium as well. And so what my pastor's advice to me was, and what I'll share on to you, was that we all can have our own spiritual advice. And so, you know, however you feel in your heart, of who you want to pray to or believe in for your God, like that doesn't need to change just because your diet changes. And so he encouraged me that if I was going to change my diet, just make sure I keep my faith where I believe my faith lies. And so I believe my faith is in God. I believe my faith is in Jesus. And I believe he created the fruits and vegetables to heal me. And so that did not change. The only thing that changed was what I was putting into my body. And so I came to peace with it. And so little by little, I started to incorporate his healing foods that he suggested in his book. The celery juice for me was immediate. That was enough to kind of get my snowball rolling of getting me from non-functional, because at that point, yeah, I was basically bedridden. I had no job. I was sleeping all day. I was barely able to take care of my kids. And then the depression hit. I mean, for anybody that's suffering with physical symptoms for that long, it's only a matter of time until it takes control of your mental state. And so I had become so severely depressed that I actually wanted to die. Believe it or not, it's hard to even say, and it feels like it was so long ago, but I actually prayed that I would die. Like, I really thought that my kids and my husband would be better off because I had done everything I could do. And if I was just going to be there as a burden, and drain them, that it would maybe be better if I passed. And I know that sounds horrible and morbid, but I just want anybody who's watching to know that, like, you feel that way. I felt that way, and know that you can get better, because I was that low too. And so I started with the celery juice, and then little by little, I started to incorporate all the other fruits and veggies into my diet. I started off immediately taking out the no foods. Now remember, I had already eliminated gluten years prior, so for me it was just, it wasn't too hard. I mean, egg, dairy, I really didn't eat much of those anyway. So yeah, eliminating the no foods was pretty easy for me. I started on my own, and I noticed a huge improvement, but after a few months, I knew I wanted some help, and so I had reached out and started working with a girl by the name of Melody Pence, and she's on Instagram, and she's wonderful. Melody, if you see this, I just want to thank you again for all of your love and support, and she's amazing. And so she helped me really come up with a fine-tuned protocol of supplements and diet. Like, for me, removing grain was really, really important. I noticed another big jump in my healing when I went completely grain-free. I'm now at the point, I'm about 2 years into where I can have grains sporadically and I'm okay. But if I go like a whole week and eat grains, I feel it. So yeah, I mean, fruits and vegetables and the foods that God created when he created the earth literally saved my life.
So what symptoms have you healed? Can you just give us a short list?
Okay. So my swollen glands, they wanted to rip out my tonsils multiple times. I have not had a single swollen gland in almost a year and a half.
Amazing.
My swollen glands, they were so big, they thought I had lymphoma. I mean, they were swollen for years. And I mean, that's frightening. I had them not only in my neck, they were all the way down into my collarbones, they were in my groin. Chills. I had the chills in the dead of summer. I mean, like, my body was constantly covered in goosebumps. Not sometimes, I'm talking for years straight. It was almost like it felt like somebody was like shredding my skin with shards of glass. Like my skin was actually painful. Have you ever had like the chills so bad on a cold day? Imagine that just never goes away. That was how I lived for almost years. Hair loss, fatigue, anxiety, debilitating anxiety, like irrational thinking anxiety, to where I felt like I was crazy. I would fear things that hadn't even happened yet. I would create scenarios in my head, and looking back, that was, everything we know now about what medical medium prepares us for in those books is like the neurotoxins and the Epstein-Barr and all the things that just take over our bodies. So getting all that stuff out has helped alleviate all of that. The brain fog.
I remember Erin and I started produce hauling together in the middle of all of that, towards the beginning of all of that. And I just remember seeing her in the very beginning and seeing her as pale white and weak. And as it went on, she just turned into this beautiful woman, really, again. Like the light was back, she started wearing makeup again, and she just looked strong, and you could just see her body responding and changing, and really just life coming back into her body. So it just,
I felt like I was walking dead for the majority of my life. And so forcing yourself to function. And so for anybody that struggles with chronic illness, that feeling of like that fatigue, you can't sleep off. You can sleep for 24 hours and you wake up and you're still tired. So those would probably be, I mean, I have a ton more joint pains.
Yeah.
severe insomnia. That was probably, that was definitely a top one. I mean, when you can't sleep, that's brutal. I mean, it is brutal. I had horrific insomnia, and so my nervous system has calmed down a ton since then. I'm able to sleep. I'm able to enjoy my life again. Something
tell
that
everybody we have a couple more minutes, but tell everybody what you just went through briefly, what you were able to do on your own after not being able to get out of bed.
After not being able to get out of bed and even drive to the grocery store. My husband actually had to do our food shopping. That's how bad I was for years. My husband just took an opportunity in another state, and so he and I lived separate for 6 months while he did his training down south, and I was up in the Philadelphia area, and I was able to sell our home and relocate our entire family to Tennessee without him. I can say with certainty, I couldn't even, like I said, go to a grocery store by myself a couple of years ago, and so to pack up an entire house and move halfway across the country, I would not be able to do that without the information that I learned from medical medium and the healing protocols and the support within the community, the power of fruits and vegetables, and the power of faith, knowing that it is God's will for us to heal. I believe that with my whole heart, and I believe that no matter what ailment we're facing today, I'm not saying you're going to heal, but you can heal. So I don't know what ailments anybody is watching has, but I want them to know that it is possible to heal.
Yeah, so that was going to be my last question for you. What do you want people to know? So that is an amazing message.
Just hope. Like, I know that you had shared in the beginning, so a big part of my life has been my faith. Today is Good Friday. Easter is Sunday. So Sunday is coming. We know that Jesus is going to be defeating death on Sunday, and he's going to rise up from that grave. And so we have hope in not only a resurrection of life for the future, like our faith as far as conquering death and going to heaven and knowing that that's our hope, but we have hope here on earth. So the Bible says, and Jesus talks about, that he came to not only give life, but so that we would live life abundantly. And I believe that he wants us to live a life of abundance, of health. And I believe that we can do that through the power of fruits and vegetables. I think that we've come so far from that as a society, to the quick, fast foods and the processed foods. But when we look back and see the way that he created the world and the way that he created our bodies, we were not designed to eat that stuff. And I was the first one that did. It was hard, and it was very, very challenging to change my diet, but it is powerful. And I believe that wherever you are today, that I want you to know that there is hope to heal. That's my message.
Erin, thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed Erin's story. It really is an amazing one. So thank you for sharing your heart with everyone and spreading hope. And thank you.
You're welcome.